Cathy, again, thank you for joining today. Feel free to share your video and unmute yourself, and we can get started when you are ready. Hi, Cathy. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Okay.
Okay. I'm working on the loading here right now.
Sure. So, hi everyone. This is Charles with Link Senior, and I'm joined today with Cathy Braxton, CEO and founder of Silverdome. This is the third and last session of our Activity Strong 4 gathering. I'm just going to go over a few quick housekeeping items, and we will be on for our third session. So first of all, please keep in mind that you can earn up to 3 NAB, NCAP, and or NCCDP today. To earn these credits, you need to attend the full session, so one session or as many as 3, and you need to fill out the required post-summit CU survey, which is going to be emailed to you all on September 15th, which is today. You need to fill in this survey before midnight Eastern Standard Time on Thursday, September 17th, and CU certificates will be emailed by the end of the day on Wednesday, September 23rd. As a reminder, this session is being recorded. We are not doing the Facebook Live today. And the fourth part is the chat and Q&A features of Zoom are enabled, but because the chat is very active, which is great, please keep it that way. If you have specific questions for the speaker today, please drop them in the Q&A feature of Zoom. Last thing is, everyone loves bingo, and we might have a few bingo players. We've got a number of submissions today. The bingo word for this session is nothing less than activity strong. Cathy, I'm extremely excited to hear you speak. I want to thank NAP and NCAP again for contributing to this platform, the Activity Strong platform. And actually, NAP was the organization that recommended Cathy. So Cathy, I'm excited to hear you speak. I'm going to stop my screen sharing so you can share your screen. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see if I do this right.
And we can see your screen.
You can see it.
Yeah.
I can't. I can't. Let's try this. So let's see. Okay. There it is. There's that. We'll go here and do that. Let's see if that works. Can you see my screen? And
absolutely.
It says bingo. Perfect. Thank you everybody for being patient with me in my efforts to Zoom. I'm typically somebody who speaks to a large crowd, and I like to speak to people one-on-one, so technology is not necessarily my strength. I really appreciate, Charles, you mentioning that NAP recommended me. I certainly hope they keep that recommendation up after my talk, because I tend to be a little bit more controversial than most, and I'm a little bit in your face. So not to offend anybody, but I do believe that what I'm going to share with you today is definitely going to tag on lovely with what Amy and Charles and Abby have already presented to you. But it might seem a little different from something that you're used to in the past. So here we go. And what I'm doing today is presenting with you a document that I created with a friend of mine, and it's called My Sole Purpose. I'm the owner of Silver Dawn. I have been in the aging industry for over 20 years. And recently, during COVID, what I have been doing is providing consultation to caregivers who are basically sheltered in place with their loved ones at home. My goal is to continue to reach out, make sure everybody that needs the help is getting the help, having their questions answered. So many people, especially caregivers in the home, are scared and don't know what to do. So I have been trying to be a voice of reason and a place for them to vent. That has been my purpose since COVID began, and it really resonates well with what we're talking about today, which is my sole purpose. I found that during the beginning of COVID, I would have been able to sleep until noon. My children are all just old enough to take care of themselves, and I could have spent days reading books and laying in hammocks, and I did that for a couple days, and it made me crazy. My husband can do it fine. That is not my cup of tea. And so it's interesting that this document that we created several years back is coming back to life and really showing me I'm a very different person from him. I'm a very different person from you. You're a very different person from your friends. What brings you purpose? We need to dig and find out what that is. So I have a little bit of a negative spin on care planning, as it were. I care planned for several years, not only as an activity director, but also as social service director. And one of the issues I found is that care planning seemed to have a lot of, it never seemed to be conducive with what we were trying to do. And so I did a little bit of what care planning is supposed to be about. It's supposed to ensure consistency of care, right? That's what we're there to do. Encourage the staff to use that information, describe the implementations that we're supposed to be used, and customizable. And yet I was finding myself and I was writing care plans in the day when we actually hand wrote them, and they were beautiful, mind you, but no one ever looked at them. And so I also found that what we want from a care plan is to enhance communication with each other as staff, but also with the family members. We want to change the culture of the care. We want it to become, to me, relationship-centered. We want to promote practice, and that's what Abby kept talking about. Every person is so different. We need to find and dig deeper as to what that is. And mostly, we need to avoid crisis decision-making. Crisis decision-making often never leads to a good outcome. So my question to you is, are we ensuring continuity of care? I put a red X next to that. Are we encouraging the staff to use this information? Not necessarily. Describing these services. I have found that caregiving care plans typically are in a chart, or now they're electronic on a computer with passcodes that people such as housekeeping, activity aides, social service aides cannot access. So this is a question. Are we getting the information to the people who utilize it? Are we customizing the support based on each individual's needs? More time than not, a lot of these care plans I have seen in my past have been very cookie cutter. Enhancing communication. How much of that care plan are we really talking about in a care plan meeting? And are we talking about how to make a care plan work by looking at ourselves? That's how we change the culture of care. And we do that when we talk about ourselves. We talk about what we as staff, we as the caregivers are bringing to the table. More often than not in care plans, we are talking about what a resident is doing that we can fix with different ideas and tools. But the reality is, most of the time, what's happening in the environment when a resident has a reaction to something that we consider something that needs to be fixed is actually their reaction to us. And so if we are not getting information to people and sharing it with them and looking in ourselves, again, that introspective piece, then we are not going to be changing the culture of care, and we will be relying then on decision-making crisis-based. So traditional care plans, what are they not achieving? They lack proper confidence. Healthcare professionals, they lack the proper tools, the confidence, the skills in having challenging conversations. Care plans oversimplify the decision-making processes. But these decisions actually are very, very personal. We're negotiating different perspectives. That's what they need to be doing. And there is critical limitations into who is getting the access to this information. So with that being said, I am not against care plans. What I want is for people to not need them and rely upon them so much, to feel that we need to have a care plan in a chart and therefore the problem is then solved because we've typed it out beautifully. So I ask, how many of you have had access to a residence chart without waiting for a nurse or a supervisor to open up that chart and give you that care plan? How many of you have had the time or not had the time to look at a care plan before you're personally engaging with somebody, with your own resident? How many of you have had access to a care during a crisis with a resident? Oftentimes, crisis management implementations are written into the care plan, and yet when a crisis occurs, there is no time to run to a care plan and read and find out what that's all about. We need to act, and we need to act quickly, which means we need to know a lot more about our residents than what we write down and then put off to the side. And how many of you have found pertinent information in the care plans that helped you change a resident's behavior? Probably not that much. And the reason is because the care plans, again, are written to change a resident's behavior when in reality, a lot of the implementations should be forced to look back at ourselves. What do we need to change in order to see a resident become more successful? And then the question is, how care plan hasn't mattered? How many of you have had a moment of connection with a new resident that's come in or someone that you haven't worked with in a while, and you haven't had access to a chart, you haven't looked at a care plan, but for some reason you've had a few conversations, you've talked to the family, and you've connected in a way you didn't need the chart. You didn't need that care plan to know what was going to help them feel better, what was going to help them de-escalate in a situation. If you've had that, then you've had that is relationship centered. So my specialty is dementia care. I do believe that would apply to everyone. But again, dementia is not conducive to behavior changes that we as neurotypical people implement. We cannot force a person with dementia to start to think or change their behaviors because it works for us. We have to change ourselves. And I like to use this term a lot. I don't use the term behaviors, as many people in NAP know. I use them as reasonable reactions because any action, any verbalization is a behavior, but it's a reaction that's typically reasonable. So if someone is acting out, if someone is lying, if a resident is trying to elope from a facility, trying to push the door to leave the facility, to leave the floor, what are they truly trying to do? Is this a behavior that we need to care plan? Or do we need to stop and look at the environment and ourselves and the others around them and try to figure out if this in fact was a reasonable reaction to the environment or to something someone said or to something they heard? Reasonable reactions can change only if we change our approach. And the current care plans are just counterintuitive with the majority of the population that we work with. So again, I'm not against care plans at all. I totally understand how we have rules and regulations that we need to follow. But if what we give are the attitudes on the one side of the screen, then what we get are the attitudes on the other side of the screen. And it is those attitudes that we tend to care plan about. But we need to start to look backwards. So, how can an introspective social history change the course of care planning? It's not to reduce, it is to reduce, it's not to eliminate, it's to reduce the need for care planning. So the first tool I'm going to provide you is that caregivers use it first. And what this means, basically, I have an example here. This is one my husband filled out. You fill it out first. You do it. And what that's going to do for the caregivers is keep your perspectives fresh. It's going to bring things to light that you may not have been aware of. If I had filled this out 6 months ago, my answers may have been a little different. And now I look at it and I realize I need to keep active. I need to keep putting out information and content. I need to type and write every day. I need to talk to somebody every day, and I need to feel like I have purpose. So one of the suggestions in this social history called My Soul Purpose is to do it every 6 months because things change. What My Soul Purpose can do is reduce the need for unnecessary care plans. Perhaps there is a reasonable reaction or a behavior that you're noticing that you are care planning on consistently every time you have a care plan meeting. And it is the same behavior that's coming up over and over and over again. That is an indication that we need to turn around and look at ourselves and look at the environment and see if this is truly a behavior that we can change, which we probably cannot, or is it something as a reasonable reaction that we ourselves can look at and flip around and change for ourselves. This type of social history will enhance the care plans that you do write, and it will enhance the meetings that you have when you're talking about a resident. You'll be talking about that resident specifically, not a cookie cutter type meeting. And you'll also be bringing in some of your own information that's going to help increase and enhance your perspective with them. This type of tool will encourage family inclusivity. So if there's residents who cannot speak for themselves, this is definitely a tool someone else can fill out for them to the best of their ability. I know when I looked at my husband's, there were probably 8 out of 10 questions I could have answered exactly the same way. There were a few that I was surprised at. And that's the goal of this, is what are we learning that we're surprised about? But when you know someone that close, the questions that are in here that we're going to go through are going to be things that family are going to know. And it's these things that are going to really enhance what you know about a person. So let's begin. So the actual tool is called My Soul Purpose, a guided introspective social history. And as it begins, we start with questions such as, what brings you purpose and feelings of satisfaction? And then it asks to consider what you did as an occupation or a hobby. What did you do that you spent at work? What aspect did you find most enjoyable? What accomplishments brought you feelings of pride and gratification? And I'm going to give you an example of why this first question is probably the most important question within this entire document. I had a resident who was moving other residents. He was ambulatory, and he was moving other residents by their wheelchairs and wheeling them out of the dining room and lining them up in the hallway. And he would go back into the dining room and grab another resident by the wheelchair and push them out into the hallway and line them up. No one knew what was going on. And one of the nurses looked up from the nurse's station. I was sitting there doing some charting, and she asked, what is Mr. Johnson doing? Why is he doing that? Because mealtime was still going on, and we have a resident who's bringing residents away from the dining table and lining them up in the hallway. Well, lo and behold, what was happening is they were testing the fire alarms that day, and the rest of us staff had known ahead of time this was going to be happening. We also had tuned it out. So for us, there was nothing different in the environment, yet for Mr. Johnson, there was. He heard those fire alarms. And if you did look in his care plan, or you looked in his social history that was collected by the staff, we found out he was a fireman in his past life. He was a volunteer fireman after he retired from the force. So when he heard the sound of the fire alarm going off, he went into action. And for him, his purpose, by hearing that, triggered him to save people, to help people, to get people out of harm's way. So we could have looked at his actions as a behavior, as something that we were going to need to care plan. And additionally, what was interesting is we actually had one of our staff members go and approach him as he was wheeling a woman with the wheelchair. And they put their hand on his hand and they said, Mr. Johnson, we need you to stop pushing residents out the door. And he said, no, they need to get to safety, which was our first clue. When the staff put her hand on him again and said, no, Mr. Johnson, we really need you to stop. she needs to go back into the dining room and finish her meal, he jerked the chair back because he was frustrated that someone was trying to stop him from doing his job. When we saw that behavior, then it became something we would need to care plan. He was being resistive. He was being aggressive towards other staff. And if you took a snapshot of that moment, that's exactly what was happening. He was being aggressive towards a staff member. But in reality, he was doing a job. He was drawn to being in purpose, the purpose that he had had in his younger life. So it's these types of things that we need to start to look at. And if we have this information and we bring this to the care plan table and we work together with the care plan team and we say, but I know he was a fireman and I know and I've seen him go into action before, what can we do instead? We can start to create an activity that's specific to him and probably pretty appropriate for the COVID time that we're living in right now. Could he walk around with the maintenance director for an hour a week, an hour a month with a clipboard and a pencil? Can they walk around and check fire alarms together? Can they go around and just make sure the fire alarms work? Can he work with someone else other than the activity director to bring back this concept of purpose through work as a one-on-one activity? So in what ways do you feel connected to the people around you? And this is one of those check boxes. This makes something very, very easy for people to answer. One-on-ones, right? Do they enjoy the one-on-one? Do they enjoy phone calls? Can they read a handwritten letter anymore? Do they prefer social media? Again, these are just ways in which you can start to give information to family, or they can give information to you. Perhaps writing a handwritten letter to a resident down the hallway is absolutely appropriate right now because they don't get to sit with them during a meal. They miss that friend that they've been seeing. So again, bringing in this purpose, they'd love to write letters, they love to write cards. They don't necessarily have to send them to people to all ends of the earth. They can start to do that within the facility too. What is your relationship with the environment and animals? Again, every relationship is a little bit different. Some people can take it or leave it. Some people love it. My husband, I have to drag him in from outside most days. So these are things that you need to know about someone. What brings them this? And because for me, I live in the Midwest, the outdoors definitely changes and our moods often change related to how much we're outdoors. So I can definitely see a little sink of a depression in him during the colder months. Is this something you might be seeing in one of your residents? Is this a cue? Do we need to have them sit near an open window or a window with a lot of light? Do we need to look at getting them up a little earlier in the morning so they get more of that light? Is this something that a family member can illuminate you on? And again, animals, pet therapy, love pet therapy. I love animals. I'm glad I'm up here so you can't hear them all. But some people don't. Some people could give or take it. So again, just knowing these types of things. What parts of nature are a big part of their life? My daughter loves plants. She will always have plants. This is something we need to know. Preference regarding personal space. This one is interesting and I have put color coded next to it because this is something you can use without giving away any personal information. But this is something that you can have perhaps on the wall or the door or on a small cork board in the resident's room to just let whomever walks through know. Red means I like to be alone. Yellow means I can go, I can stay, doesn't matter. And green means I crave it all. I want all the input I can get. So this might help you color coding with, say, a housekeeper or a maintenance director, any of those staff who are working side by side with you, not be working one-on-one with that resident. This may be something for them to just help them understand and know what's going on. If they are a red light person, the instructor wants to come in and do some fiddling with the lamp, is this a good time? Or resident their alone time that they find purpose in, that they cherish. Languages of love. Again, different colors use as a guide. And I encourage you to come out for yourself first. It's pretty interesting what you will uncover as you go through this information and you start to think about how you respond, how you react, how languages of love. I think most of us are very familiar with those. Gift giving, time, words of affirmation, access to physical touch. So if you have a resident who a physical touch primary language, you may see them sitting closer to other residents, hand holding, grabbing, or reaching for someone. This may be a love language that's being expressed not with their spouse, but perhaps with someone they've never met before, but walking down the hall, holding hands. I think we've all had this experience where a family member approaches us and says, why is she holding onto that man's hand? That is not it's not her husband. She shouldn't be doing that. This is an opportunity for you. Take a breath and take it on yourself and say, you know what? I am so glad you pointed that out to us. I can see that that's really upsetting to you. One of the things I realized is my love language is physical touch. When I get home, I want a massage. I want someone to rub my feet. That's how I know I feel connected to other people. I wonder if your wife, Mary, has the same way. Can you tell me how you think she have felt loved when you were married? And in this conversation, not only have you made that partner, the husband, who's very upset, you've made him look really, really good, but you've also made the resident look fantastic. And that's the goal. Always looking to make our partner look and feel great. And you're getting information at the same time. Now, conversely, primary language of affection and of appreciation. So this is oftentimes very, very different. My primary love language is quality time. I can look at that. I look at the list over and over and over again, and I've always drawn back to quality time. I love when someone carves out time to spend with me. I look forward to that. Gifts, I really could care less. I don't really mind one way or the other, but that's very different from a languageation. I am wholeheartedly a words of affirmation kind of gal. You tell me I'm awesome. You write me a good review. You compliment me, and we are best friends, because words of affirmation to me feel so appreciated. But it's different for every person. It can also be different based on your home life versus your work life. Some people may have felt that tangible gifts, extra days off, extra time off, or an award was something that they really felt appreciated with when it came to work. But then at home, it was something different, perhaps a service. So again, for yourself, consider, what is it like for you at home, for you at work? Is it the same? And which one of these is it for you? Primary stress responses. This is one of my favorites. Now, again, this is a fantastic question. I've got some emojis next to it. Again, a little color coded that definitely you can use to your advantage if you have a space where you can put this information at the door. So you know that when you're walking in, if a resident has just stormed off and gone into their room, are they a fight, a flight, or a freeze in regards to a primary stress response? Very interesting and good to know. But first, you need to discover it for yourself. So typically, the primary something that I flee from a situation. I avoid conflict at all costs, no matter. And they come out.
Hey, Cathy, this is Charles. I don't know if you're hearing me, but you've been breaking up for the past few seconds, I want to say. Cathy?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, now we can hear you. For maybe a minute or so, you kind of broke off.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no problem.
Oh, I see. Yes, I wasn't getting those chats. My apologies. Yeah. I'm doing the best I can.
It's okay, no problem.
Okay, I'm going to go back a screen if I can.
I think you kind of drop at the middle of this one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. We started hearing you talk about this one. Yeah.
Okay, good. I certainly hope these are going to help you guys. Okay, fight, flight, and freeze. Typically, the three main stress responders, responses, fawn and sleep. There's a controversy about. Some people believe they are two additional stress responses. Others believe they're coping mechanisms. This, to me, I think they're coping mechanisms, and I'll tell you why. I am definitely a flight person. I avoid conflict at all costs. But I'm also a fawn. And what a fawn is oftentimes identified with someone who is codependent and grew up in an abusive home, to say the least. I think we all feel that way sometimes. I grew up in a home where things were not consistent, and I was scared. And if you have that type of codependency type of growing, you tend to fawn. You feel better at the detriment of youth. So you may see this in your residents as well. And sleep, again, possibly a coping mechanism based on stress. There are people who, when they are stressed, go into a room, lay their head down and go to sleep. And for those of us who can't do that, we hate them because we don't understand how they can shut it all out. Because for the majority of us, we lay in our bed with our eyes poked up against the ceiling, wondering how we could have done things differently. How is this going to sort itself out? These things keep us up at night. But there are people who can sleep through crises. Actually, that is a coping mechanism for them. So keep in mind with that, because we often talk about sleep, and we're going to talk more about it, but we often talk about sleep as being a bad thing. We talk about residents napping as being something we need to stop altogether. And I'm going to give you some information on sleep that you're going to be using from the event. But it's also going to help you be that educator in the facility, just like when you talked to the husband who was walking down the hall with someone else. Again, maybe your role can be the educator. Certainly not the person that knows everything. Certainly not the person that's going to tell them the right way, but an educator. This is what I've learned about sleep. Does this help you? And that's how you can share it with people. But again, identify your stress response first. Identify it, because if you're a fight and there's another resident who's a fighter, the two of you may not work well together, especially if you're having a rough day. And you should know this about yourself. The more you know about yourself, the better you're going to treat your residents. I co-wrote this with a friend, and she was a fighter. She identified herself as a fighter, and she remembered back to a time when she worked with a resident who was also a fighter. Literally, he was a boxer back in his past life. And he would walk around with a frame of himself during his days, his boxing days, when he was all buff and everything. And he would come at her with that framed picture. Not quite sure why, but there was something about her that set him off. She was a fighter. He was a fighter. It was not going to be a good situation. And when they realized this together as a team, they immediately made sure that wherever he was, she wasn't. They would try to cycle themselves around the facility without ever running into each other. And then they would make sure that they identified other people who perhaps weren't fighters at all, maybe a flight or a freeze, and that person could come in and intervene if having a hard time.
Yeah. Cathy, you still?
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, okay. You were breaking up. Go ahead.
Okay. I'm trying to get to go forward. It's being bad. It was doing well.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay. Are you able to see the screen and hear me okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful. Okay. Hand in hand with stress responses. What specific triggers cause you to feel frustrated? This is a beautiful image of mine. I hate when someone leaves me with no toilet paper. I also have a pet peeve of when people put toilet paper on the toilet paper holder the wrong way, but we don't have to talk about that right now. Anyway, pet peeves, things that annoy you. What are those? They're different for each person, and they can kind of set somebody off. And if you're a human, which I think you are as you're paying attention, you have probably a time in your life where you've had a bad day. One of these triggers or these stressors popped up and you just lost it. You either started crying, you started laughing uncontrollably, or you ran up to your room or hid in the bathroom. If that's ever happened to you, and I hope it has because I don't want to be the only one, know that there are triggers and set us off. And to consider that this wouldn't happen to a resident living in a nursing home is preposterous. They're small specific things are going to set them off. They may not be able to articulate that to you, but they're there. And this might be where the family can come in and help answer these questions. What were things that really triggered mom or dad off? What really made your rest out? Some pet peeves that you can remember. And again, these are good things to even talk about. If you had a group during COVID times, for sitting around the table at a 6-foot distance, talking about pet peeves in your past life is a conversation. And it gets people laughing and it gets people telling their story. And it also helps you to understand them so much. What characteristics do you value in a long-lasting, meaningful relationship? I know this question is long. What qualities of your closest relationship do you value? Which features of your interactions are responsible for relationship success? This is a fantastic question. I know it sounds a little long-winded, but that last part is very important. What parts of your interactions are responsible for relationship success? This is something where you can talk to the resident or the family and ask them who they have great relationship success with. Perhaps they have a son or a daughter that they get along with a little bit better, or a sister that they've always been really close to. Perhaps it's their spouse. See, growing up that made mother and father get along well. What were the ways in which they interacted that made that relationship so successful? This information is vital to know that success in creating, cultivating, and onto a successful relationship. The things you're going to start to offer. These are the things to see will help develop your stronger. Okay, we're on to sleep. This is my favorite topic. Sleep is more important than eating or drinking. You will die of starvation or you die of starvation. You will die of sleep or you die of whatever the word is, not having enough to drink, dehydration, okay? Sleep is vital. And I think we downplay how sleep is a part of our lives so much that we end up actually ignoring. And I think if there's any care plan that needs to be written and followed, it's one about sleep. Each person's experience and relationship with sleep is so different. Those preferences really need to be documented and understood. And I know over the years we have learned to add more activities for residents who are night owls, but I'm pretty sure we're not doing as best as we could. Now, I can foresay my husband would do awful right now because he's someone who stays up till morning, and there is no way someone's going to run activities at 3 in the morning. But knowing that he's a night owl like that, that's going to help give you that information of maybe that's why they're sleeping in later. Maybe that's why they don't like to attend breakfast. Maybe get them up out of bed at 7 in the morning, ripping those shades open. It's all this information. What are we doing? Are we creating a culture that is conducive? That's residents' lifestyle patterns that they've always been used to as best as possible. Or are we in a culture of care where we're doing this because it works for us? So when you're going through these questions about this, waking up frequently with pain or the need to urinate through the night, this is a very, very important question. If someone does not get through 3 specific cycles of a sleep, 3 specific sleep cycles per night, then they are considered sleep deprived. And what that means is if they are not getting through, doing the math, 2.5, 3.5, 6 to 7 hours of sleep continually, they are sleep deprived. If they're waking up with pain in the middle of the night or needing to urinate frequently and having to get out and do that, how long are they staying up in pain? How able are they to get to the bathroom on their own and return to bed and fall right back asleep? Probably not very easily. Older adults have a much harder time initiating sleep and maintaining sleep. Much more difficult than even you or I. So if they're being woken more frequently, then they're up more often, getting the full cycles of sleep that they need. Are they easily awoken? Are you easily awoken? Sounds, intrusions.
Cathy, you continue to break up.
Bedtime, do they have one and does it work? And if so, what does it entail? My routine is pajamas, hot tea, and my book. And I've been doing this bedtime routine much that once I get those all settled in and I'm covered in my covers, it doesn't take me but about 10 minutes for me to want to put my book down and fall asleep. My body actually is expecting sleep. And I've set it up to expect that because of the routine. So, is there a routine they had in their past? Is it something we can bring back in now into their present to help with any sleeping problems they have? Weekend and weekdays, for most of us, they do vary. We try to take our opportunity to sleep in when we can. But I'm going to just say, I have some education behind this, what I'm going to say regarding sleep. It is not advisable. It's absolutely not advisable. Try to wake up at the same time every single day. And then napping. This is a very important question, and it's very deep and personal to me. Do you want every day? If you
Cathy, I don't know if you can hear me, but you're breaking off pretty bad. Is there a way for you to call in, Cathy?
Yes.
Sorry, you keep on breaking quite a lot. Is it possible for you to call in versus doing the audio through your computer?
Sure. Let's see.
You can just switch the audio.
Switch the order.
The audio, sorry, it's my accent.
Oh, the audio. I see what you're saying. Switch the audio.
Actually, it works now.
Okay.
Up to you.
Okay. My apologies. Thank you for being patient. Okay, so as I was talking about napping, very, very important. And I think we downplay it in nursing homes. I think we downplay it in assisted livings. And what I think we need to understand is this is a place where you can, again, become an educator to other staff and an educator to families. This is where you can explain to them what experiences for whenever you are encouraged to be an educator on a topic that seems a little controversial or something that someone's heated up about, take it on, take it for yourself, answer it about you first. Talk about you. If you can do that, then the person you're talking to is going to be more willing to listen. Because what you've done is you've leveled. comes to napping, if someone's upset that their mom is napping often, place where you can come, I've learned this about sleep and it blew me away. I found out that if someone doesn't get 6 hours of continuous sleep through the night, a short nap will refresh them. So we've tried to create an environment where someone can do that, because even a 10 to 45-minute nap will help clear some of the garbage out that wasn't cleared out through the night. There are technical terms for that, but I'm not going to go into it right now. It's called the glymphatic system. Got to clear that garbage out. And if we're not doing it at night, our bodies will force and find a way to do it. Napping is one of them. So napping is not necessarily bad. And I encourage you to be an educator about that. But again, do this first for yourself. Are you a napper? Do you like to nap? How do you feel about it? And then what you feel first. Preferences about television, movies, books, all of these types of things. These are the places where I think a lot of our social histories started. These are talking points. If you find that there's a group of residents that all have seeing live as something that was a tremendous memory for them, then you've just created a small fringe group of people who can get together and do maybe a 4 or a 5-on-1 session about plays and theater. Obviously, we do a lot of books, audio books, stories of going to the. What would those be? Again, it's that for 4-on-1 activity professional, talking about these types of specific. Getting this information will help you find those people, create your fringe groups. Warm and fuzzy memories, again, thing you want to have. You want to have this in your arsenal. What are the warm and fuzzy memories that they have from childhood, youth, and growing up? If you've got these in your back pocket and someone is in the middle of a crisis, or they're feeling frustrated, or they're escalating, as we call it, to these warm and fuzzy memories is a place to go to create de-escalation. However, jump there right away. You cannot take someone from escalation to de-escalation in the blink of an eye. You have in slow steps. But your goal should be that you're going to bring them down into that warm and fuzzy memory where you can connect. But you're going to have to do things along the way to connect with them. You're going to have to show them that if they look frustrated, you've been frustrated too. They are share with them a time when you've been irritated too. Join them in that. Sit in that with them first. Again, that creates that bond, that creates that relationship. It builds on that trust. Then you slowly move away from the situation physically, just a little bit. Let's take a walk away from that because that's frustrating me too. And now we start to talk and we see something down the hallway. Oh, that reminds me of when I used to go to the movies with my dad every. I loved that. And now you're warm and fuzzy memory to that resident. And hopefully you've gone through the steps where you've gotten to a place where you can de-escalate them. So how an introspective social history can reduce the need for excessive care planning and give you more tools to create a relationship-centered care approach to activities. Cultural and family customs are important. Need to know this kind of stuff. Again, this is where you're going to find your fringe groups. People who really love Day of the Dead, right? That they've celebrated that their whole lives. Get that fringe group together. Are there people of European descent? Are there people of Indian descent that you can pull together? You probably are already doing this, and I think that's fantastic. Build it up, make it stronger. And this, at the end of this, is how you can download a copy. Sole purpose is a free download, and it's available on both of my websites, silverdawntraining.com and silverdawnconsulting.com. Both of them, you can go there and find it as a free download. You can download it as a Google Doc, print it out. Share it with the world. Use it as much as you want with yourself. Please share the information with your family. I think that the more we dig into this type of stuff about ourselves, the more we're going to be open to perspectives with our residents. And if you have a hard time downloading this document, you can always email me, info@gmail.com. And that is my information right there.
Thank you so much, Cathy. That was awesome. Despite the audio trouble, your slides were really nicely done, so it was possible to read it. And we've got quite a few questions. So I will ask them more or less in order. So Karen was asking, when charting in a dementia unit, is napping charted as an activity? What are your thoughts on this? Cathy?
I'm here.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah, go ahead.
if you stop your share, Cathy, it might help with the quality.
What?
If you just stop sharing your screen. Yeah.
Thank goodness for people who know buttons. Okay, can I have that question again? It was about.
Is when charting in a dementia unit, is napping charted as an activity?
I can't answer that because I don't know. I have not worked in a facility in 5 years. I've been working outside of the facility, coming in. I don't believe it would be considered an activity. It's more, I would, sleep is equal to eat formal exercise. So I don't think if we don't eating, then chart sleeping. However, I do think that a care plan about sleep and preferences is very, very important.
Okay. And then we had another question from Ashley, which was repeated. Do you have recommendations for standardizing this kind of information community-wide, right? So in this case, Ashley has 454 beds with over 500 staff, and she points out that implementing all the things you're recommending can be a big push.
Absolutely.
Any advice about that?
My advice to that is, yes, that this is a huge undertaking, and with that many residents and that many staff, I agree. So I would say take the document. This is Ashley. Ashley, take the document yourself. Fill it out. What did you find most meaningful? Limit it down. Maybe take the top 3 questions. Maybe start with the ones that are color-coded. But in order for us to change that culture, we do need to take on a little bit more. And I love all of you so much for all that you're doing. I certainly am not on here more work. But yeah, I would say take a couple.
Yeah, unfortunately, you were kind of breaking off in your answer. I'll go with one last question, which is, how do you get the aides to buy into learning about resin preferences and their passion?
Say that again, I'm sorry.
How do you get the aides, so other staff members, to buy into learning about resin preferences and their passion?
I think because this document is not, a HIPAA compliant document, it really doesn't give off a lot of personalized medical information. I think these documents can and should be shared with our staff. And I think if you've got consistent staff, then you send them home with a copy of 3 residents and their my sole purpose filled out for that's a piece of homework they have to do, or a CEU that they can complete. But I think that because this document is available and open to be used like this, it's really just getting that information to those people. It's maybe making a copy, sending it home with them. Read about these, and we'll talk.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Cathy, for your fantastic presentation. You know, I do like the fact, obviously, that you use the word soul in the, you know, the title of your tour here, because ultimately, you know, soul often is correlated with purpose, and that is, again, the number one reason why most activity or life enrichment directors do their work. I also wanted to thank you for you know, sharing how your tour is actually evidence-based, and me personally, I connected on quite a few items, including the piece about sleep. So I understand that the session the audio wasn't perfect all the time, but anyone on the line, please feel free to reach out to Cathy. I'm showing her contact information. I'm sure Cathy will be more than happy to answer any questions you might have, provide guidances, right? Remember that understanding who our residents are, what are their sorts of preferences and purpose is the way to start, and the most important, starting it well is crucial in resident engagement. So again, Cathy, thank you so much for joining. Please feel free to stick around for the meet and greet. And everyone on the line, again, thank you for participating in this third and last session of our Activity Strong 4 gathering. I am going to stop the recording and make just a couple announcements.